So the full UFC 300 fight card was just announced with the order of the fights, and it has got social media going crazy over the disrespect on some of these UFC vets. Of course, the people always find something to be upset about, and people are outraged with the fact that Bo Nickel is on the main card, the pay-per-view, over the likes of fighters like Yuri Prochazka, Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling. We got a ton of former world champions and great fights on the preliminary card, and we got Bo Nickel on the main card on pay-per-view. So as you can see here, I pulled it up for you guys so we can all take a look at it. Got Charles Oliveira opening up the pay-per-view, Cody Brunge's Bo Nickel, and the Gaethje Holloway, the Wei Li and Yan Xiaonan, and then of course the main event, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. But yeah, this Bo Nickel fight is what people are absolutely outraged over. To be honest, some of them, what people are saying makes absolute sense, but some of the stuff that people are saying, they just don't understand how the pay-per-view system works and how, how the UFC sets these cards up works, because a lot of people are complaining about Charles Oliveira being first and then Bo Nickel being second. That's actually not a slap in the face for Charles Oliveira. That's actually a good thing. That means that they value this fight over this one because they want to start the card out with a banger. We've seen this on multiple pay-per-views where the more fan favorite fight, the better fight for the fans that the fans are more excited about. Most of the time they end up being the first fight on the pay-per-view because they want to start out strong. And then the second or third fight will be the two fights that people aren't, as excited for. And then after that will be the fights that people are most excited for on the card. Having Charles Oliveira as the second fight on the pay-per-view, that doesn't make them more money. That doesn't do anything for them. That just pushes their fight back another time. Like I said, the UFC, they like to open out these pay-per-views strong. So actually putting Charles Oliveira fight first, that means they actually think highly of it, and more highly of it than Bo Nickel's fight, which is why Bo Nickel's is second. But I do agree, having, Bo Nickel on the pay-per-view instead of like the Prochazka and Alexander Rakic fight is kind of crazy. I thought even the Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling fight would end up on the pay-per-view instead. But the thing is, it all comes down to popularity and the big names. Among all these names on this card, who is going to get the casual fan to spend some money on this card the most? And look, Bo Nickel, he's arguably already one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Everybody is talking about this guy. That's the only reason why I could see why the UFC would put him on the pay-per-view over all of these vet UFC fighters and former world champions. Like, do I think that they should be on the prelims? Of course I think that. But at the same time, I could clearly see why they put them on the main card. Realistically, it all comes down to hype and popularity, because for these pay-per-views, you got to get people to want to spend money. And at the end of the day, I think, Bo Nickel is probably the most hyped up prospect in the UFC right now. So why wouldn't they, put him on the pay-per-view, which would even boost his stock even more if he were to get an impressive win on a huge card like this. And this isn't the first time that people have been talking about this when it comes to Bo Nickel. I'm pretty sure on the last card, it was a similar situation that Bo Nickel was on the pay-per-view, where there was someone who was pushed down to the prelims, and they were severely upset about that Bo Nickel in just his second fight in the UFC was on the main card. But hey, I ain't gonna read too much into it. I don't really care, because I'm just happy to see a stacked card ahead of us on UFC 300. Dana White was right. The opening fight is Renato Moicano and Jalen Turner. They could honestly be a co-main event or even a headline for a UFC fight night. And they're the very, very first fight of the night. But I absolutely cannot wait for this card to go down. Feel free to give me your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, thank you all so much for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.